Hey everyone, I did my first impromptu. I'm awake. What are you doing? Do you want to talk about things? And I had a good conversation tonight with Pat. So that's what you'll see in the video that follows. I'm going to pop in and do these whenever. I don't know if I'll be in pajamas, jeans, or coming off the field out of a boat, off the beach. Just tired of sitting at my desk, so I don't know what time zone it'll be. But if you're around and you want to do it, keep an eye on my professional profile on social media and also the MCERC pages and have a question ready. If it's something I think we can talk about, then I'll give you the link and we'll have a chat. So hope you enjoy it. I think it was a great conversation.
In the background.
I'm good with kids, no problem. This was supposed to be, I don't sleep a lot, so I thought there's so many people, especially since the show, that have wanted to talk about some stuff, and I thought, why not? I can look at everybody's profile and see who looks like they just want an advertise, and there's a lot of kids that want to talk, there's a lot of adults, so you're the first.
Oh my, really? I'm gonna close
Yeah,
this
I just
window.
I just started this. So tell me about yourself, because you know me, because I'm all over the place. So I don't know anything about you.
Okay, yeah. So my name is Kat. I have a background in biology. I live in Oakland, California. So my big thing is trying to get our kids going into STEM. I
Mhm.
have a 3-year-old in the background, and I wrote some children's books based off of him. And
Wow.
yeah, one of my biggest things though is to I like to talk to people about how they got into the field, because when I talk to kids and students, I always tell them it's not a one-way trip. There's always, dips and turns and things like that. And the main thing, though, I really love is carnivores, whether they're marine carnivores or land carnivores. I love carnivores, and I've always wanted to do research on them. Every time I like get a start doing looking for schools or PhD programs, something happens, but
Mhm.
it's life. That's what it is.
Well, everything finds its own time. So, I mean, you've got an impressive background, and one thing that you've got going for you that a lot of people don't is that in my field, the marine biology, people have a tendency to have a very beeline path to get where they want to go. And my background started off in medicine. I'm a clinical laboratory scientist. Now, I
Oh,
wanted to
wow.
start off marine biology from day one. Both my parents, all my family are from a very small beach town in Massachusetts. So, and we moved inland about 30 minutes when I was 7, but we spent all our time with our family at the beach. I'm still mad at my parents for moving away from that town. Just want you to know that. Um, so I started doing that, but like you said, life happens. And so I redirected. I got my bachelor's degree in clinical laboratory medicine. Never regretted it. I mean, it gave me the science I want and the puzzles. I love solving puzzles. But I had kids. I was married at the time, and I have 4 kids that are grown now and 6 grandkids. So they have their kids. But all during those years, that degree made more sense because I knew I could always get a job, 3 shifts a day, hospitals everywhere, in other laboratories. I knew I could always make a paycheck and be there for my kids. So it
Right.
was a good move. But then once my youngest one went off to school, my second one, my son called me up. He was doing his master's at the time, and he said, "Mom, you have to go back to school." Because I taught my whole career. I also was a paramedic. During that, I lived way out in the country at that time in Texas, and there was a need, and it was interesting, so I did that. But he said, "You need to go back to school to teach because all this other stuff you're teaching, we need people who can teach better, and you just need to do that." And I said, "You're out of your mind. I just got all of you out of the house. I can cruise. I don't have as many things to worry about as I did when you
Right.
were home and juggling." And then I thought about it. And I said, it's like the only thing on my bucket list I haven't done is to get my PhD in marine biology. And most people don't know I'm deaf. I had a progressive hearing loss, and for the last 8 or 9 years, I'm like beyond hearing aids. So Texas happens to have, or did at least at the time, a program where if you were deaf or blind, if you went to a state school, your tuition was paid for.
Wow.
So
Okay.
then I really didn't have a reason not to do it. So I just did it. I just took the leap and did it. And it was a good decision. It wasn't easy, but I was in my 40s at the time.
Really?
So you've got young kids, but your pathway is you've got a broad perspective. And my broad background, I'm also neuro-alternative. I don't like neurodivergent. It sounds really negative. I'm neuro-alternative. My brain's wired differently. I'm wicked neuro-alternative. But I can solve puzzles. I have that pattern recognition. So it's a good fit for me to do that stuff and have a broad background. So your background, and nobody prepares you like your kids do
I
for
believe that.
stuff.
I believe
Yeah,
that.
it's really
Yeah,
difficult.
I am like I'm currently in my 40s. I started late and I only got one and done. But I was able to do a lot of different things in my 20s and 30s and
Mhm.
travel and have fun or whatever. And now I have this desire to do the PhD. And my son's father is great. He's just like, let me know how I can support you and go ahead and do it.
That's huge.
um yeah, yeah, but it's just, and it's finding the program. So that's kind of where I am. I saw a master's program at Miami University in Ohio, but they do
Mhm.
earth expeditions, and so it kind of gets your feet in the ground doing hands-on things.
Right.
But I love it. And like, my two favorite animals in the world, one is the cheetah and the other is the blue whale. And I'm just like, if I was able to do research on either one of those, or I would be in hog heaven.
So let me tell you a few things that will give you a reality check, okay? The first one is nobody tells you how to get a PhD and what you're getting into until you're in it. And
Right,
and I and I find that to be true. It doesn't matter how much homework you do on the internet. And for some reason, my experience, and I've yet to hear a different experience, is that when you do go through the process of an advisor having a conversation, can you work well together? But nobody ever sits down and says this is what it's going to take. And I'm sure that that's a global statement on my part. That's not true, but it's not common if it happens, at least
right.
in the United States. And so I'm going to share that with you, and I do this all the time. But there's a couple of approaches. If you get a PhD in the United States, our philosophy in this country is have a solid core body of knowledge, and then you narrow as you go. And that's true with every level of education here. So I prefer that in some ways because we can shift. And as I said, my diverse background is what lets me solve some of the puzzles we did out on the ship in the Dominican Republic. That's what does it.
Mhm.
I think differently. Um, but it takes much longer to do that if you do a science degree, right? If you go to other places around the world, most other places, the education paths in a lot of countries, you start focusing as early as, grade 7. So by the time they've gotten through what we call high school, they know what they're going to be doing.
Yeah,
And feel free to tell me if you have to stop for your baby. I'm fine with
yeah.
that. Family first, always.
Yeah, no, he is an only child, and he is pretty much knows how to play by himself, except for, of course, when I want to do anything, then he's like, mommy, pay attention.
Right. Yeah, I get that.
But yeah, I'm listening.
So, so it's a big thing to do. Now, if you go to Europe, Australia, um, just a lot of other places. And I believe Canada from what I've seen, because everybody in grade school focuses early, your strengths are identified, you're put on a track, courses that you may not apply in your career are kind of thinned out a little bit. And when you get into college, then you're taking a degree that's pretty much predetermined. And,
Mhm.
and there are some of those countries where you do 3 years for your bachelor's degree, and if you go a fourth, it's an honors bachelor's degree. So you're more likely to do a project because by that time you've got a lot of background. And then when you
Right.
go on for your master's and your PhD, the time period is short because you're really doing research. Well, we're doing courses before we
Yeah.
do research. So you need to know that. Um, in the long run, I prefer our way because I find that we're able to pull in more stuff. And I'll tell you, I took courses kicking and screaming that I couldn't talk my advisors out of. And and as an adult grandmother at the time for my PhD, I was pretty good at talking my way out of some stuff. But I was lucky I had some great advisors that said, "No, you need to do this," and it was a good thing. But it'll take you a long time. And
Yeah.
and so there's that. And then you have to decide what you wanna be when you grow up, right? So the path to PhD, let's just take the United States, assuming with a family, you'll be here. Although I encourage you, whatever you know, your family does to support yourself if you can go somewhere else in the world, don't rule it out. We tend to think that's impossible. It's really not that hard. Uh,
Right.
so you're going to want to know what you want to be. Then you're going to want to go do a search on publications to see who's doing that work. And then there's kind of a pathway to have these conversations. And maybe some of these like impromptu meetings, I'll be able to bring more of that out. I teach a whole course on this, but I'm happy to do this. It's just a long conversation. So
Right.
you have those emails and then hopefully you have a conversation and you find out if you get along. But we forget as potential students working with somebody, we interview them as much as they interview us. And that's super important. So do they have money to support you? Or
Right.
do they expect you to take loans, graduate with $150,000 or more of loans to get your PhD? Um, how many publications will you have? Do they anticipate will you have at least 2 publications out during your PhD? And will they support you through the process of learning how to do that? Will they support you and teach you how to find a grant and then how to write for a grant? So when you get your degree, you know how to do those things to get yourself going. And will they network for you?
Right.
So if you don't have those things when you go in, now you're not only stressing about your coursework and your family,
Mhm.
but you're stressing about your loans that are piling up and how are you going to pay for those and do you like the person you're working with? Because that makes all the difference. To
Yeah.
talk to other people, and if they don't say much, run.
Right.
Right, that's a big deal. And then
Yeah.
think outside the box. So if you're going to study, I tell people who want to be a marine biologist, don't get a degree in marine biology. Our degree is a dime a dozen and it's really competitive. Get a degree in something that allows you to study whatever it is about marine biology you like. So if you want to study blue whales, maybe your degree will be in engineering, and you're the kind of engineering will be building the equipment that you need to access areas where blue whales are.
Right.
A super drone, underwater, whatever. Then you're not a marine biologist, but there's no reason for your PhD dissertation you can't do your engineering and go do it with blue whales.
Right.
And then you're marketable over a broader audience, right?
Right.
Now, do you have a master's degree yet?
Yes, I do.
Okay. A lot of people try to get into this. So for anybody who ends up watching this, don't skip your master's degree. I don't know why we're so, determined to take like you can't start off a PhD and say it's going to take me this long. Nobody
Right.
tells you that. It's your job until it's not your job anymore. So if you say I'm going to finish this in 3 years, well, I'm probably going to laugh. But but by the time you hit that point, if you still have 2 more years in front of you, it's like being pregnant past your due date.
Yeah, no, I know
It's
that.
really hard, right?
Yeah,
So you got to be prepared for it to be your job, which is why it's important that whoever you work with has a means to give you a
support you.
yeah, while you're doing this and help you write grants to support you.
Right.
That's because you may get halfway through and say, you know what? This happened to me my first year. I'm going to study killer whales in the Gulf of Mexico, which is what I started to do. And then when I started validating my methodology, I realized I needed to do the humpback whale work first to be able to do what I wanted to do. And so I shifted. And now I've been back in that direction for a while. People just didn't know about it. But if I had set my mind, look, I'm going to finish in this amount of time, I wouldn't have been able to cope with that.
Right.
So
Yeah.
keep writing books. If you can write children's books and have that royalty income or whatever come in, whatever you
Yeah,
keep
I
it.
mean, that's the marketing. That part is where I am right now, is getting the books out there. So we have a museum out here in San Francisco called the Exploratorium. I will be doing some book readings there in 2 weeks, and I did some book readings there about 2 months ago, and they're asking me to come back, which is cool because I read my book and then I do an experiment with the book, and the kids can be all involved and
So
be
plug it.
all.
What's the title of your book?
It's 4 books. So my son's name is Carter, and they're called Carter Can Be. It's Carter can be an astrophysicist, a marine biologist, an animal biologist, and Carter can be a seismologist. So it's those 4 books.
That's really interesting. What a great way to do that. And what's the age group?
They're early elementary, so around 4 to 7 or 8. They're an easy read, but they do have scientific terms in there,
Mhm.
and they're kind of like, it's not a ripoff of the Magic School Bus, but I love the Magic School Bus. So it's only kids, no adults, but they get to change into different things. And like in the marine biology book, they turn into fish, where they get to learn about all the fish around them and things like that.
That's great. That's really
Yeah.
great. Well, congrats on finishing on that kind of a project. Um, Writing a book is of any kind is not a small feat. So if somebody wants to get it, do you already have it out anywhere?
Yes, yes, they're on Amazon. They're also on my website, which is my name. So it's catbobino.com.
And it shows up on this video, your name. So that's good. So I'm glad you got to plug that. I don't usually let people do that because people usually come in here for that reason and not want to talk about good stuff. But I'm really happy to support, in a small way to at least get your name out there, let people kind of pay attention. I
Well,
think
thank you. I
that's
appreciate
awesome.
that. So,
So
I being out on the boat, like, how long are you out on the boat for each research that you do?
depends on what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So the first 10 years of my research, I was in Puerto Rico most of so I did a lot at the same time, but I was in Puerto Rico for my field research and I was teaching. And from day one, we've had because I've always been an educator in whatever field I worked in. So that's one thing I didn't want to give up. I developed a very solid curriculum. So people would come out in the field with me for a week at a time and get 3 college credit for that in independent study. So it's hard work. We get up very early in the morning. We'd go out. Now in the Caribbean, we have the trade winds that blow in, and they typically blow in, and it's something we explain how, why, and all of that. Somewhere in the early afternoon, anywhere from like 1 to 2:30 ish, and the seas pick up because the winds pick up. So we're
Mm-hmm.
usually off the water with few exceptions from those types, collecting different kinds of data as the years went on, and the research progressed.
Right.
So we could be out there 4 to 6 hours generally, but it takes us at least an hour in the morning to get all the clocks on everything we own synchronized to GPS so that if we had to cross-reference things, make sure we had batteries. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we usually had 4 interns and then anywhere from 2 or more research assistants. So we had a lot of people that were getting ready, grab and go breakfast, remind everybody who needed it to take seasick medicine,
Mm-hmm.
and carry more with them. The night before we have a recipe. These are such interesting stories. I think about this. You're making me smile. Think about this. for banana bread and for, just just field bread, just a plain white bread. So on the boat, everybody carried water bottles, but we would, every morning that we would go now take out of the fridge, 2 loaves of banana bread and cut them into chunks because it had carbs, sugar, and it was heavy. So and we would bring lunch too, but if things were fast and furious, which sometimes we had whales all around us, you
Right.
could grab a chunk and eat that and feel
Right.
pretty good, right? So we would do that. So it takes morning is a big prep. So we would get up 5:30 in the morning. Then we would be back off the water 2-ish, depending on the year. Then we pile into the van, and a lot of the times we'd stop at Cold Stone Creamery, get ice cream,
Yeah.
because you just need that after a lot of time, and celebrate usually whatever we saw, because it was always amazing. And then we go back to the field house, and everybody would be exhausted from the sunshine and all the adrenaline. And we would take showers, no hot water, so everybody was in and out. To the Caribbean, so it wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
And then an hour nap. And then everybody would get up, and I would be in my office making copies of all the data we collected, photographs, recordings. We rinsed, but as people were taking a shower, we'd have all the equipment rinsed, drying on the porch.
Right.
And then they would get together and they had things they did as a group without me to talk through and work through. And we made our meals together. So at night we would make supper together. And then after supper, we sat around a big round table and we talked about before they came, they had to read 23 peer-reviewed publications for this particular thing with the humpback whale research. And then every night we would pick a topic the night before so that people could review those. And then the next night we'd sit around and talk about and have just conversations that we started and you never knew what direction they went in. And took the information out of those publications that can be very dry to read and turn them into a story so that they fit into what we were doing and make sense. And we would get to bed at 10 or 11 at night and start all over again the next day for a week straight. So we usually had Saturdays, we would drop off people at the airport 4 in the morning, 2, 3, 4 in the morning, go food shopping for the next week, come back, and then all the research assistants would go. That was their time they could go somewhere. They had the day off because early Sunday morning we picked up the next group for a week.
Wow.
So we did that until COVID, 2 hurricanes, an earthquake, and COVID. And everything got brought from Puerto Rico back to the States. When we get back out in the Gulf of Mexico coming up soon, it's not going to be structured like that. The baseline work has been done. It's been 14 years.
Wow.
Now I can focus on some very specific questions I want to answer and go back and look at killer whales. So that was really hard on me and the research assistants. It was a really long day. The interns would go home after a week, but we did that January, February, March, and April. And then I usually taught a course in May with another a professor from another university or a high school or something like that. So 5 months a year, and I don't want to do that anymore. It's just a long day. So now what we'll do is we'll go out and we'll kind of thin that routine out a little bit, invite citizen scientists out, so anybody at all who's interested to be able to take the program and go out.
Yes.
It'll be out of Florida, so you'll be able to come out or Puerto Rico. Yeah, one of the two probably. So we'll have university students and citizen scientists sometimes mixed together because that gives the university students a chance to teach, which is,
Right.
is a good thing. And so we'll change the formula up a little bit. If you come out as a citizen scientist, you're not going to do this for a career. And I want people to be able to just really enjoy it and have it. If we're wherever we are, have a chance to have some fun in the evenings, have some time to look around, snorkel a little bit and that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So it'll be easier. But for my particular research, because that's also how we funded all the research. That's how we did it. And,
Yeah.
you know, created this organization at the same time, turned it into a nonprofit, all during the beginning years of my journey. So don't do that.
I was just about to say, I actually have a nonprofit. It's a very small nonprofit out here. And but what my goal is to be able to like record and film things like this to share with schools and things like that so that
Right.
schools and kids can see what it's like to actually be on the boat or actually be doing
Right.
the research, instead of um, one of my favorite things I always talk about is going to like criminology or CSI training, and you think you're running around with a gun and you're chasing people and you're doing
Mhm.
all this stuff, and that's not the actual science behind it. You
Right.
might go and collect, but you're also in a white lab just running things. You don't have a gun. So like
Mhm.
realistically, what scientists do in the field is what I would like to show kids and say, hey, yeah, it looks great. The pictures are
Right.
wonderful, videos are wonderful, but also you got to do this prep. You got to do this work. You have to do this
Right.
reading. You have to do this part. This is all a part of going into those fields.
And I think when we were on the Ocean Explorer, yeah, that was the goal of that series, was to try to inspire young kids to do what the scientists did. And I have to hand it to them. I mean, we had a lot of film that they did. They did a lot of media. And I am not a media person at all, but they did a lot of media, and then they had to edit it down
Yeah,
to less than an hour, really, right? And that was monumental, to take a month's worth of work and edit it down. But that's kind of why I wanted to do this. There are questions that people want to ask me all the time. Sometimes they're, how do I do what you do? But
right,
those memes that were out 5 or 6 years ago about, this is what I think I do, this is what my parents think I do,
right, right, right,
this is what everybody else thinks I do, but this is what I really do.
right,
It, and that's kind of what this conversation is, and that's the point, to do this.
right.
And I also volunteer on a service that grade schools can subscribe to. And if they want to talk to a marine biologist for 20 or 30 minutes, they'll reach out and see if they have any that want to answer it. And I try to do several of those a year. And often it's, what do you do every day?
Right.
So once we get back out in the water, we actually have somebody who I've talked to for, for several months now, and she is a journalist that is also like, has the marketing and all that stuff with it. So the idea is, let's get these cameras out there and show it. And they're sort
Yeah,
of training me to remember, because I'm not the generation born with a cell phone in my hand.
right.
So to remember, and I'm better at it, to post and not to forget, where everybody else has that camera in their hand, and I'm deaf, so I don't think about it, I just put it down.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I'm
and
trying
I mean
better.
I'm very similar. I was born in the 80s, so I was outside majority of the time as a kid. I don't have a camera or a phone in my face majority
Right.
of the time. But when I moved back to, I used to actually live in Texas myself in the
Ah,
Dallas area. And when I
okay.
moved back to California, it was like, oh, I did biology. And they were like, oh, you're a biologist? Come speak to my school. Come speak here. Come do this. We never meet a black woman in this or even a black person. I'm like, well, there's black people in science.
Right.
They're all over. You're not looking for them though. That's the key. That's the issue is you're always a lot of things are pushed on sports and entertainment,
Mhm.
but there's a lot of people doing science that we don't highlight, we don't talk to, we don't showcase. And that's the thing is like, I've always wanted to do media. I'm not good at it. I can't shoot or edit or anything, but I see the need that people like you and anyone else who have a story should be heard, and kids should see that. And like,
Right.
how do we get that in front of them? And so that's why I started the nonprofit. honestly need to work more on it, but finding a way to highlight everyone in the field and like you said earlier, yeah, you can study sharks or you can study whales, but if you also do engineering, you're also on the boat doing it. But we don't think
Mhm.
that way. We don't
Right.
consider that as an option.
It's an important thing to do, and a really nice chapter to this is that okay, so I'm terrible at remembering, especially since the pandemic, what month, what year we were in, but I guess it was right around 2022, maybe. Um, there's a university down in Miami, and I was doing something else because I've also done industry work. So I led a team for a company in Alaska. We did mitigation work on ships. So anytime somebody puts sound in the water, like putting in wind farms and putting new piers and new docks or whatever, you have to have a marine biologist out there with special training to make sure that sound doesn't disturb per very set criteria.
Right,
Um, and so I led that team as well. That's how I paid my bills because I didn't grab a paycheck from this company so we could keep all our programs in reach of people who wanted them. And if my
right,
salary was incorporated here, that would drive the cost of programs up. So until COVID, and even through COVID mostly, everybody was a volunteer unless they taught a field course, and then the field instructors got paid for the course. So that's kind of nice, but this particular organization, we were working on some other projects, and one of the women that worked there asked me if they could put my picture on a poster because they had a fence on campus where they highlighted representatives of different careers. So anybody that
right.
visited the campus, or I think even if you're on it, could kind of walk by that fence and see these posters and read about people. And sometimes I think of that little girl that saw the picture of Michelle Obama, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
people could walk by and can you see yourself on this fence?
exactly.
I'm an older woman and I see ageism all the time. The kids are younger and more attractive, and I say kids, you're the age of my kids. So I
Right.
see that. I I reek of the mom aura, like everybody calls me, and people have said, you need to back off, and I've given up. I just that's who I am, so I've got that. But I'm deaf. I'm a woman. I'm older. I'm 60. I'm about to turn 62, and I'm neuro alternative. So you wrap all these things together, and that's not a typical profile that people usually expect to see on a commercial for
Right.
anything really. And then I study a big part of what I do is communication between marine mammals. So when she asked me that, I said, "Yeah, please. That would be great." So she did put a poster up, and I got the little questionnaire so they could put the bullets on the poster. And after it, one of them was like, what was the hardest thing about becoming a marine biologist? And I emailed it to her. And then I said, I realized afterwards, I never said that being deaf was difficult. I don't, I never saw it as an obstacle. And that got my attention.
Right.
So they printed the poster, they put it on this fence. Not long afterwards, there's a group of students from a school for the deaf from the United States that visits this campus annually. And they reached out to her and see if it was okay to talk to me about possibly doing some things together because the students saw the poster and went,
Right.
"What?" Because nobody ever does that. So I hear you. A black woman in the United States, you pick geographically where you're located, that's going to affect a lot of things. Same with me, just being a woman in general makes a
Right.
difference. Um, and then where's the representation? Well, sometimes there is, depending on what you pick, but sometimes there isn't at all for any of us. And then you add those other demographics and you really narrow things down. So I love the idea of just having these chit chats
Yeah.
to see where people are coming from. And
Absolutely.
and you want to do this with a 3-year-old? life comes at its own pace.
Yes.
So I encourage you to breathe, really figure out what you want to do, get all your ducks in a row. Maybe when he goes to school full time, because you have such a supportive partner, that might work for you.
Right.
But one of my advisors, so you get a committee when you get your PhD. In the United States, you take classes. Oftentimes, you have to teach, TA some of the undergraduate classes,
Yeah.
and then you have to do all your work. If you get a PhD, I don't know too many biologists that get a PhD that do not work 7 days a week, way too many hours. We tend to be overachievers, and we tend to try to get to the best rated university instead of making lifestyle choices. So maybe the university you want to be on staff when you're done, assuming you're not going into industry for this kind of thing, you might very well prepare yourself to be accepted as faculty, but it also might kill you with a family, right? To do all that. Where if you got a small college of students that maybe didn't get perfect scores on their SATs or the GREs, but you really still get to do your research, but you also get to breathe in the middle.
Yeah.
What did you gain by going to a very competitive atmosphere? Besides, besides stress. So nobody tells you once you get to this point, you're administrator. So don't, so you get your master's, don't skip a master's. I tell people that they try to skip it and do that, like PhD master's combinations. That's too narrow. You're robbing yourself, and you still have to do the same amount of credits. It's just called a
Yeah.
PhD. But don't wait till you're 50 years old to figure out that you could have been doing what makes you really happy without having to be an overachiever. That's a big deal.
Yeah. That's always been the hard part because I always feel like I am one of those people who will find something they really like, latch on, and then be like, "Oh, I like this over here as well. Let me do this." And "Oh, I like this over here. Let me do this." And it becomes way too many things happening at one time that
Mhm.
nothing really gets done. And
Right.
so I know that about myself. And I have a professor at a school out here. He doesn't have room in his lab, but he said he would be an advisor if I can find room in another lab. And he studies interactions of human and animal interactions terrestrial. So it's coyotes out here in California, mountain lions coming in people's backyards, things like that. Which I'm like,
Everywhere. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's like, well, we're in their backyard, so obviously they're going to be in our backyard. But
Right.
I digress. But what my favorite thing, or what I absolutely love to do, is kind of like this. I do a podcast. I used to do a podcast. I don't do it anymore. Where I would interview people in STEM
Mhm.
because my love is telling people stories. That's what I really love to do. Is because I have my own story, but there's so many stories, and like you said, so many people in their niche that you never know who you're going to inspire with your niche.
Right.
But your story has to get out there to be inspirational.
So maybe journalism is your thing, some kind of marketing and journalism, like Natalie, who I, mentioned before, might be a better way. And it doesn't mean that you can't
Yeah.
do both. Blue whales, you could do blue whales, cheetahs, and coyotes if you become somebody who does journalism and just, you know, get yourself out there, find the people who are doing the projects you want to participate in.
Right.
If they're running a program, try to take their program for a week or whatever they're doing and see if you can find the common thread and jump on that. I think
Yeah.
you're onto something with communication. Um, obviously there's different tiers to that, but our media is so good right now at really letting people see things that I think that's wide open for you to figure it out. But if you get your PhD, you're the boss.
Yeah.
That means you're also doing budgets and funding and all those things. So I highly encourage you to look into, and I just told my grandson this, go find a job on Indeed and monster.com and see what it requires. If that's what you want to do, look and see if that job exists already and read what the application says you have to do it. If it doesn't say that you need a PhD, don't do it. It's,
Yeah.
there's, you do a PhD if you want to do your own research, if you need it to be heard in your field, or if you want to teach on a campus.
Yeah.
If you don't
I,
need those 3 things to be happy, and you can go do freelance and be really good at what you do, and there are people that are photographers that do that, that don't do the writing, and like Paul Nicklin is one of them. He's a photographer for, National Geographic, but he's independent and well known. So most people remember when I talked to them the bit where he was the one that got in the water with the seal that tried to feed him penguins. Did you
yeah.
see that?
Yeah.
That's him. So that's his job. Um, now that may
What's
not
his
be your
name? I'm
job.
gonna have to look him up.
Paul Nicklin.
Paul Nicklin.
Uh-huh. So you can see
Okay.
what his education is and where it
Yeah.
took him. But that's what I tell people to go look for the job you want to do and then see what's required. But if you're going to spend 5 to 7 years getting a PhD, probably racking up a lot of debt, a lot of stress, getting it because you're overachiever is not how to apply your best overachieving skills. Instead, get out there and do as many projects as you can to network, meet people, and figure out what it is that's going to get you where you want to be. And I hope everybody hears that because everybody thinks, they see people like me in my field and they see PhD. Oh, if I want to do what she's doing, well, no. If you want to be the boss and design your own marine biology research project, then yes. But if you want to do what I want to do, then maybe you can get a job on a team like a team that I have, and or be a grant writer for nonprofit organizations and say, hey, if I can come out and do what you're doing, I'll write your grants for you in your organization and pay for my own salary and get to do what you do. So there's thinking outside the box goes a long way.
Well, thank you. I hope we can finish this conversation or continue this conversation another time, but I hear my son doing a lot, so
And
I'm
I'm
gonna
ready
go
to
check.
go to sleep. This is my
Yeah.
impromptu. Let's go. So I'll just answer anybody else who's done it and say it was great. And I like this. This was fun. So thanks
Yeah,
for just
thank you.
jumping on and not worrying about what I'm in pajamas and I'm always probably or I'll be outside doing, who knows, yard work or something and come in soaked and sweaty and say, who wants to talk while I cool down? And so I hope this works.
Yeah, well, good luck with that. I think it's great.
You're part of my great experiment cat. So thanks for that. And listen, let me know how you do.
All right. Thank you
Okay?
very
I'd
much.
really like updates.
Okay.
All right, take care.
All right. Bye.
Bye.